I think we all want to address this problem and solve it. I mean, clearly there's a problem in our city as there is in many cities. I've met with people on both sides of the issue. Anybody who's wanted to meet with me, we've met with. I've listened to arguments on both sides. And, you know, in our own staff report, it says the City of Fresno has historically struggled to effectively address substandard rental housing and related health and public safety violations due to a reactive code enforcement strategy that's lacked focus and resources. Over the past year, the administration and the council have worked more clearly to define housing code violations, increase the amount of fines, enhanced enforcement provisions, and has aggressively pursued legal actions against irresponsible property owners. Initially, it started with the STOP program, which has become ASSET. An ASSET is basically where we seriously go after landlords. When we are aware of a violation, we go after them. We fine them. We ensure that payments are made. And we've also moved to take their properties. That's something that's really not been done before. And we need to continue our efforts and double our efforts at making sure that we do that. We also need to do a tenant education. I mean, people talked a lot about tenant education and informing tenants of their rights. There is a fear for some people, I'm sure, to file a complaint. I'm sure they fear that they will be evicted. And we need to let them know that they have rights. There are laws against that. You know, you can't just do that without violating the law. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm sure it does. But we need to educate people about their rights. So let's address, you know, the legislation. In the staff report as well, when it highlights all the things we haven't done, it also says that it's believed that a large majority of rental properties are safe and well maintained by responsible property owners and professional property management companies. It's estimated that in the 85 to 90,000 rental units we have in the city, perhaps there's a 10 to 15% problem. Well, that means that 85% or more aren't a problem. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They maintain standard housing, they maintain healthy, quality housing for the majority of people. And I think that does happen throughout the city. And I think we don't hear from those folks. We've heard from some of them, but the majority of the people do the right thing. And so part of what I'm concerned about as we move forward in this legislation is, are we overreaching? Are we, in a sense, punishing people who do the right thing because everybody now has to register? Everybody has to have some sort of inspection. The inspections are $100 per inspection. Now, that might not seem like a lot now, and people always, you know, say, well, over 5 years, it's not much. But the reality is, those costs usually get passed on down to tenants. Whenever we enact taxes or charge people more money, they usually pass it on down to their customers, in this case, the tenants. And the fact is, while this is a legislation that we all believe and want it to believe that it's going to do something very positive, many of us, we're not going to be here for 10 years or 15 years from now when if we approve this, that $100 will not be $100, it'll be $400 and $500. And perhaps there's going to be other regulations. And perhaps when this government program gets bigger, as most do, people who are sitting up here will say, perhaps we shouldn't be charging that rent. Those landlords are charging too much, and they should be charging less. The concern I always have whenever we enact a large government program or enact a new government program, or what are the unintended consequences of that program? Because there always are. What will happen with the tenant? Will their rents go up? Will they be evicted? What if the tenant doesn't want the city or government to come into their home? I don't want government to come into my house, and I know a lot of people don't, and perhaps you wouldn't want them to come into your home. Now, as I said, I've listened to a lot of people. I'd like to just briefly read what somebody sent me. They said, as a landlord for a 4-unit apartment complex, my wife and I are proactive in caring for our apartment units and for the tenants. We already pay for the fire department inspections every year. We feel there are already California laws that protect the tenants more so than the landlords. And in reality, the California laws are more geared toward tenants. They are. Tenants have the resources to help them. Meanwhile, as a landlord, my wife and I maintain our units in the common area weekly and sooner if tenants call. We have our heat and air units inspected and cleaned every year before summer. We offer free washer and dryer room. We pay the utilities. We never charge a late fee when the tenants have a valid financial problem or a family crisis. We include an addendum in our rental agreement that the tenant notifies us of any problems in the unit, and we respond ASAP. The $100 fee per unit inspection is unfair to us and the tenants. Just because there are a few bad landlord-tenant situations and the media is concerned about it does not indicate that we're all irresponsible. And there is a little thing called the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment says that people have a right not to have their properties searched without a warrant. Now, I would like to finish. I didn't interrupt anybody here. You may not like what I'm saying, but I'd like you to show me the same respect I showed you. There is a thing called the Fourth Amendment. I respect the Fourth Amendment. There are cities, like in Garland, Texas, where people have sued the city over the Fourth Amendment. People coming in and forcing inspections. It's something we can't just ignore because you may not like it, but it's there for a reason, and I respect it. You know, we all support getting rid of slumlords. I do. I don't think there's anybody up here who doesn't support getting rid of slumlords. I own some apartments. I can tell you mine are taken care of all the time. When people call me, I take care of it right away. But around me, they don't take care of it. I see it every day. And one of them is an out-of-town owner. And the city's aware of that person. And they haven't enforced their own municipal codes. So the question is, how do we get to the same place all of us want? People are believing right now that it's this rental inspection program. I question, do we have laws currently against substandard housing? The answer is yes. Do we have laws against code violations? We do. Do we have laws against vermin in apartments and public safety codes? Yes, we do. And ultimately, when we do, if we were to do this rental inspection program, you know what we come back to if people don't follow it? Enforcement. The very thing that my colleagues developed with asset. It always will come back to enforcement. And if we're not serious about enforcement, which this city has not been until it was highlighted with Somerset and the Fresno Bee, then we're not going to solve the problem. And it's only when we get serious about enforcement, it's only when we send out the message by taking someone's property who doesn't respond to the code violations that the message goes out, we're not messing around anymore. So being opposed to this legislation is about being in support of enforcing our existing laws and codes. It's about being opposed to unfair government programs and not just supporting feel-good legislation because all of us feel good we did something today without fully understanding the unintended consequences, and there will be many of them. So I say let's continue our efforts with asset, let's continue our enforcement policies, let's continue to strengthen them, but let's not be just for government and expanding government and charging people fees and people who haven't done anything wrong registering and charging them fees and punishing 85 to 90% of the population that doesn't do anything wrong. I'm against that, just as I'm against slumlords. I'm for fairness, and I'm for making sure that we do what's effective, not what just feels good. We have regulations, state, federal, local laws to ensure safe housing. Let's enforce what laws we have on the books. Let's continue our efforts. Let's educate tenants. And let's send a message out that Fresno's not messing around with slumlords, including the ones that are out of town. So I'm for making sure that we get rid of slumlords. We may have a different point of view. We're all in this together. I share your concerns. I've heard every one of them. But I can't support something that I think is unfair, has untoward consequences, and ultimately we'll come back to the very thing we're trying to do, which is enforcement. Thank you.